I'd like us to think about this last week, how times have changed, how the generalized panic and chaos of society around us has just whipped up. I'd be in work and I'd go, I'd get off for lunch or something and I'd be talking to my partners and they're like, oh, don't look at your retirement. Don't look at your retirement. Things have changed. Oh, don't look. It's so low. It's fallen so low. Oh yeah, they just had to close the stock market. It opened up and they just closed it. It's over. Things are just plummeting. Just panic, Panic in the media, panic in the hospitals, panic in the world around us. And how does one in this world survive? And I thought, this is a strange time. I've never experienced anything like this. People in my age group, they compare it to 9/11 because that was a time when the skies were empty. Suddenly there were no planes flying in the skies because of fear of terrorism. But indeed today I'd say a higher dose of terrorism is being experienced in the world around us. It's higher than just afraid of your plane blowing up. It's, the whole world is in a panic. And our generation has not experienced a panic like this. You look at least here in the first world, at least you say Australia, America, maybe Europe. You look at other places like Syria, where whole families are wiped out. They've been fighting for years, 10, 15 years. Just continual wipeout. There's no groceries on the stores over there. Whole towns are leveled by Assad's troops, by the interventions of Russia, the United States, Iran, all fighting the Kurds. That's real chaos. That's real terror. And we just haven't experienced that in the first world. It's something that we're not accustomed to. So suddenly when I go to King Soopers or Safeway, I can't find toilet paper to wipe my bottom, and there's a panic. But there are places in the world where human life is so cheap. Whole family's gone, blown up. And all that's left is just one or two, a little kid here or there. Millions are dying, but it doesn't really mean anything to us till it's us. You know what I mean? Till we realize that, I can't wipe my bottom with toilet paper anymore because the store's been cleared out. So, as we look at this, today I'd like to focus on Psalm 91, a psalm that how many of you have memorized? As a little kid, I memorized all of Psalm 91. There was a song that my mom had a song book with different psalms. And 91 was the easiest one to remember. And you could memorize the whole song, and it meant a lot to me. But I think today we will see it under a new light compared to what we may have, let's say, memorized as a child. Because I think that these are words written thousands of years ago to a different generation, but they still apply to us today. And we can still learn a great deal from these things. Because I truly believe that this is just a taste of what is about to happen. This is just a taste. This gives us an idea. Who here is really sick right now? But you're already experiencing, you realize that society hangs on a thread that is so thin, and you think that we're all civil human beings, but it doesn't take much to disrupt everything, and you have pure chaos. And if we go, really quickly, go to Revelation 16, what does Revelation 16 talk about? The bowls of wrath, the judgments, the sores, the sea turning to blood, the waters turning to blood, darkness and pain. The earth is utterly shaken. This world, we believe, is going to change. And it's in the groaning pains of the end, and the groaning pains, the labor pains of something new, a new world that is to come. And I do believe that we are near the end of that, and we need to be prepared. And the only way to be prepared is not stocking up toilet paper. It's not buying guns, tons of guns, and just putting them in my closet because I'm going to defend my toilet paper with my guns. Because in the end, there will always be somebody with a bigger gun. There will always be somebody more organized. In the end, there needs to be a faith that is founded on something. And, the Psalms are a special book. How many people read the Psalms daily? Daily reading of the Psalms. Nobody. How many people have read through the Psalms once? How many have read through it twice? Okay. There's a beautiful book out there. I recommend everyone read it. It's by Reverend N.T. Wright, and it's called The Case for the Psalms. And I'm going to read you an excerpt from this. He reads the Psalms every month, beginning to end, beginning to end, beginning to end, every month. And he believes that the Psalms are more than just writings. And in that book, he says that, when Jesus dies on the cross, he says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" That is a prayer that Christ had internalized into his heart from constant communion and reading of the Psalms. And we can take those prayers and those songs. It was the hymn book of the Second Temple Jews, the hymn book of the days of Christ. We can take those prayers and internalize them in our hearts, like the early people of God did. On page 21 of The Case for the Psalms, Reverend Wright writes, "The Psalms, I want to suggest here, are songs and poems that help us not just to understand the most ancient and relevant worldview, but actually to inhabit and celebrate it. This worldview in which, contrary to most modern assumptions, God's time and ours overlap and intersect. God's space and ours overlap and interlock. And even this is the greatest, this is the really startling one, of course. The sheer material of the world of God's creation is infused, suffused, and flooded with God's own life and love and glory. As you sing the psalms, pray the psalms, ponder the psalms, you find yourself drawn into a world in which certain things make sense that would not otherwise do so. In particular, you will be drawn into a world where God and Jesus make sense in a way they would not otherwise do." A lot of the Psalms, they point straight to Christ. A lot of the Psalms, they deal with people in their sickest, worst, most miserable time. And these psalmists rely on the grace of Christ and God alone. We can take those same psalms and take our time, our reality, and infuse it and blend it with God's reality and time, and create and gain great strength from that. So with that being said, we're going to talk in depth today about Psalms 91. You could say it's a simple, short psalm, and it is, but there's a lot that we can still learn from it that we don't necessarily see right on the surface of reading this psalm. So, for those who have not noticed, Psalms 91 is written in a very interesting literary way. It is a liturgy. It's called an antiphonal arrangement. It was meant to have verses 1 and 2 be read by one speaker. Then verses 3 and 4 is responded to by a second speaker. Then 5 through 8 is the first speaker responding. And then 9 through 13 is back to the second speaker. And then the third speaker reads 14 through 16. So it was A, B, C. Complicated. Maybe at the end of the service we'll break it down and read it like how the Jews would read it. That might be an interesting thing. We'll split up, have speakers, and read the psalm the whole way through. Let us start with our key text. And it is, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty." Now, when I was a child, I thought of this. What does this mean? I thought, well, you're in trouble. You're in danger. The bad people are out to get you, so you go hide. You hide in God's shadow. It's a hiding place. What's a hiding place? A hiding place is temporary, right? You sneak in there, you close the door, like when I'm hiding from Ellie. We're playing hide and seek. It's temporary. I hide, and I'm safe. The Jews in Nazi Germany, hiding. Temporary places. Sometimes it was more than temporary. The word used here is dwell. What does it mean to dwell? Is that a temporary hiding place? Dwelling is to inhabit, to be there. You dwell in your home. So this is a permanency. This is more than just safety in a hiding place. This is talking about people who have their thoughts always on God, and they make Him their abode and Him their constant companion. So it's more than just a temporary place to hide. It's a place, it's an abode with Christ, a walk with Christ that we follow all of our lives. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in Him I will trust. Very interesting. So we're doing a little bit of exegesis today. We're just reading the Psalms, that's all. We're reading them, but very interesting. What does the psalmist do here? He has 4 names for God. 4 separate names. I never noticed that. 4 separate names for God. The secret place of the Most High, Elyon, 1 name. Shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty, Shaddai, the 2nd name. I will say of the Lord, Yahweh, the 3rd name. He is my refuge and my fortress. My God, Eloah, the 4th name, in whom I will trust. 4 names. And then you have 4 metaphors. This was not just slapped together. This was literary. 4 metaphors. These are metaphors that describe the safety of God. He who dwells in the secret place, metaphor number 1. Under the shadow, metaphor number 2 of the Almighty. The Lord, He is my refuge, metaphor number 3. He's a fortress, metaphor number 4. The way they describe God, multidimensional, multiple names, and He's not just a fortress, He protects you in many different ways. They cover all the angles. In truth, when you are with God, you are safer than anywhere else in the world. It's not when you're on Air Force One with the suitcase with all the nuclear codes, or when you're stuck down in NORAD under Cheyenne Mountain where they can drop a nuke on you. That's not the safest place. The safest place is abiding with God, and He protects you in a multidimensional way. So 4 names for God, 4 metaphors to describe the security felt when you are living a life with God. We'll continue on. We'll go to verse 3, and I'm reading from the New King James primarily today. Surely He shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence. He shall cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you shall take refuge. His truth shall be your shield and buckler. So what do these bring to us, even in this modern day? First of all, if you look at comparisons, Psalms 11, Psalms 84, the soul of man or the life of man is compared to what? It's compared to a bird. And what is the danger of the bird? While they're flying around, the bird is safe. But if the bird needs to come down to eat something or to drink something, the bird is at risk. Why? Because there is a trapper that's out. So always, the bird is always in danger. You can't fly forever. You have to land somewhere. And how does the fowler work? Are they just sitting there, obvious, to trap the soul of man? No, they may have a seed, or they may have something that the bird wants, and the bird will land there, and suddenly the trap is sprung, the talon of the bird is caught, and that's it. The bird is trapped. He can't go anywhere. He has been trapped. He will be killed. So that is imagery that we can realize. And when you go to Psalms 11 and Psalms 84, you realize that is what we are. We are in danger, and it's the subtle things. We learned last Sabbath, it's the little foxes. It's not the obvious things that are going to get us. It's the subtle things that sneak into our lives, like the virus, like the coronavirus. There's no big impact when you get it. You don't know you had it for weeks, sometimes 2 weeks, 5 to 14 days. You're asymptomatic. You don't feel anything. But it slowly is growing, slowly replicating. The bird is just grabbing that little trinket it's going to have, that bit of food, and the trap is sprung, and he's suddenly caught. Additionally, the imagery here, what is God described as? something that meant a lot to the people of Israel, ancient Israel, and it still means something that we can understand today. He's as a bird, a mother hen, you could say. And what is the mother hen doing? Covering with his feathers, and under his wings you shall take refuge. The word here for cover is shakak. And it's more than just like, a bird's holding its feathers out. It actually means, in Hebrew, it means to make inaccessible, to shut off, for the purpose of protection. And then it follows that up beautifully in verse 4 about how his truth, the truth of God, is your shield and buckler. You can tie that into the armor of God. So it's not just a weak feather, a weak wing protecting us. This is something that shuts us in. It protects us from everything around us. It's as a shield or a buckler used in warfare. That is the kind of protection that God gives to those who abide in him, who live with him. Now is when Psalms 91 gets even more crazy. We'll read it as we read it now, and then we'll read it as an ancient Hebrew would read it. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor of the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor of the destruction that lays waste at noonday. Verses 5 and 6. Do we experience that today? Mildly so, maybe more. There's a terror, right? There's a terror that's... How much of it is real? How much of it is false? Doesn't matter. If there's a terror, there's terrorism. It doesn't have to be that real. It just needs to be real enough to create that fear. The word for terror in terror by night is pakad, and that means debilitating fear. So that is somebody who cannot move. They are so scared, they're frozen. They cannot move. They're vulnerable. Then they talk about the arrow that flies by day. What is that pointing towards? What does that mean in our day and age? Is that being caught in crossfire in a gang war? Is that warfare? Warfare? In the ancient times, armies would come in. This describes more of a warfare problem where the world around you is descending into chaos. But still, the people of God, they shall not be afraid of this. There is more to this part of Psalms 91 than what we read right here. If you read this in the ancient original tongue, there's two ways that we can get this. There's the Septuagint, which is the Greek form of the Old Hebrew Bible. It was around in Jesus' time. It was very popular. So there was the Septuagint. There was the Aramaic Bible, or the Aramaic Old Testament, also well read in Jesus' time. And then there was the Masoretic text, which was a tradition and carried on separately, Hebrew only. And that is what the majority of our Bibles is made up of. The majority of our Old Testament tends to be the Masoretic texts. And what a bunch of these scholars will do is they will look at these different texts and they'll say, which one is the oldest one? Which one is the most accurate one? And they base it off of looking at different things, the Dead Sea Scrolls here, there, and everywhere. And in some places they feel the Masoretic text, which our Old Testaments in our English Bibles tend to translate, they feel that that's more accurate. And in some ways they feel that, the ancient Greek text probably translated the ancient Hebrew a little bit better in other parts of the Bible. So they like to look at this. And they found something very, very interesting. They found something very interesting in the Septuagint section of this Bible, the Greek translation that Christ would have read. And there are parts of that and flashes of that still in our Bible today. So these words for terror of the night, arrow that flies by day, pestilence, and destruction, they're not just things that happen. They are divine entities. They are demons in the ancient times. In fact, it is believed that many of the ancient Hebrews would use psalms like Psalm 91 to cast out demons or to protect oneself from the devil. And you think, how is that possible? How is that possible? Because you got to see, brothers and sisters, in this day and age, we see a virus. In that day and age, they don't know what's happening, but there is a demon going out killing people. That's how they saw it. And I'll start with terror of the night. The Hebrew word pahad, layela, is the Hebrew version of the Mesopotamian night demon called Lilith. I don't know who knows anything about Lilith. But Lilith is also referenced in Solomon 3:8, Isaiah 34:14. Isaiah 34:14 calls it the screech owl, calls her the screech owl. Solomon 3:8 says, all of them wearing swords and experts in war, each with his sword against his thigh, ready to fight against the terror of the night. Who was this Lilith? An ancient Mesopotamian god that the Hebrews may have been familiar with. She was known for coming in the night in a terrifying way. She would do things like prevent consummation of marriage, prevent conception. Families who couldn't have children, Lilith was there. She would come in the middle of the night and prevent a child from being conceived. Other things, the death of a child, the premature death of an infant. The child is normal, healthy, fine, and the parents wake up in the morning and the baby's dead. What happened? Lilith was here. Lilith killed the baby. You think they're crazy, but in this day and age we have something called sudden infant death syndrome, which no one knows what it is. No one knows why these kids die. Healthy, totally healthy, no problems. So if you look at an ancient people, it makes sense for them to think, you know what, something terrifying is happening in the night. So that brings this verse to a whole new level. Not only is this a fear, this is a legitimate fear. Scary things happen at night. But you know what? With God on my side, I can be safe. There's more demons in Psalms 91, believe it or not. The arrow that flies by day. So, okay, we can talk about as being hit by a stray arrow or bullet in warfare. Okay. But if you read it in the Septuagint, that Greek version I told you about, they actually say, you will not be afraid of the midday demon. And there was actually a demon that they believe, his name was called Resheph, and he was a demon who was an archer. So it's not just talking about warfare, it's talking about a spiritual element where there was pestilence in the land during the day. And this Resheph archer, they felt, was associated with heat stroke. Working out in the sun, and suddenly somebody gets overheated and they die. Why did they die? They were healthy. They never had a cough. They never had a fever. It must be Resheph. He killed this person. So in the ancient Hebrew, they had ways of labeling these things. And today when we read it with our English gloss, oh, like, yeah, destruction, plagues, yes, bad stuff. But there is more to this than just destruction and plagues. This is complete reliance on God when you know that the devil is out to get you. Verses 5 and 6 are parallels. Remember, terror of the night, arrow of the day. This is a literary thing. Then it goes back to the night, right? The pestilence in the darkness and the destruction at the midday. So it's really what happens a lot in the Psalms is what the writer will do is they will say the same thing over again. They'll say A, B, and then they'll do like A prime, B prime, saying the same thing, saying it twice, to kind of nail it home. But in those other things, there are also demons. I can give you some sources if you are interested where I got this information. So verses 5 and 6, they refer to two demons. You have pestilence that stalks in darkness. That's Baer. This demon or deity is found in the Ugaritic texts, part of the old Mesopotamian texts, all part of the culture that floated around the ancient Hebrews at this time. And he was the god of destruction. And he is always mentioned with Resheph, the guy who goes around with the arrow. They would kind of say like pestilence and destruction, going throughout the land. Those are the demons. The one who, the destruction that wastes away at noonday, that's Keteb. He's a buddy of the god Mot. This is all strange. Mot is the god of death. So when you read the verse in Hosea 13:14, it says, I shall ransom them from the power of Sheol. I shall redeem them from death, or Mot. O death, where are your plagues, Baer? O Sheol, where is your sting, Keteb? Compassion is hidden from my eyes. Where do we find this verse? Quote it again. 1 Corinthians 15, 55 through 57. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? The sting of death is sin. The power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God who gives us victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. So through Christ, all these things which are plagues that they believed were evil spirits, and are. We know that evil spirits in this day and age are tied to these things. We can know that the sting of death was taken away, that the plagues, the Baer, the Keteb, all these things, all these adversities against the God of order were taken away by who? By Christ himself, who died on the cross for us. So I think that Psalms 91, while we can read it in this day and age, modern day and age, if we take it back and we look at it how an ancient Hebrew would look at it, it takes a whole new meaning. There's a lot of things that we know now that don't terrify us, but it terrified them. And they attributed it to the devil himself, stalking through the land. How much more can we go today? There are things we cannot understand. There are things we do not know. And it's easy to get this panic of the plague, death. But we can still look and realize that because of Christ, he is in control. No matter what happens, he is in control, because it says it in 1 Corinthians. The people of Christ's time would read that and their minds would flash totally back to the ancient Mesopotamian gods. It made sense. That was how real it was for them. How real is our faith today? You go on to verse 7. 1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. Only with your eyes shall you look and see the rewards of the wicked. This is a battle situation, you could say, where people are killed all around you. But you know what? The person who is faithful, abiding in Christ, he's safe. He or she is safe. What does this mean? Does this mean that we won't die of Ebola or the bubonic plague? Only non-Christians died of the bubonic plague? Does it mean that, SARS, when it was going around, only the bad people died of SARS? Because it says here, 1,000 will fall on either side, but it shall not come near me. I don't think it says that at all. I think it says that, you know what? You need to realize and have complete trust in God. No matter what happens, he has another plan. He has a plan, and in the end, he will be glorified. It's not all about us. Maybe it's within his will that some of us may fall to COVID-19. But in the end, you have to have a faith that there is something beyond this, that there is a creator who cares, and in the end, he will be glorified, and hopefully I can fit into his plan to glorify him. And when we talk about look and see the reward of the wicked, there is a reward. There is a reward for being faithful, and there is a reward for not being faithful. And we know that a lot of the plagues that will fall out on the end will be plagues of what? Punishment. Punishment for those who failed and refused to obey the laws of God. Verse 9. Because you have made the Lord, who is my refuge, even the Most High, your dwelling place, no evil shall befall you, nor shall any plague come near your dwelling. So this goes along with what we were talking about in verse 1. The Lord is a place where you live. He's a place where you abide. It's not a temporary hiding place. So many times we run into trouble in life, and suddenly we're very religious. We need God. I'm suffering depression or anxiety, and suddenly, I have an anxiety attack and I'm uncomfortable, so I'm going to pray and I'm going to pray, and I'm praying day and night. But it's more than that. It's a place where we need to abide with Christ all the time, not when it's only bad, and then we forget Him when it's good. This is a continuous living in Christ. The plague here is actually different than the plague written above, where it's a demonic name, ancient demonic name. It's actually here nega, which refers to illness and physical injury. Going on to verse 11 and 12. For He, being God, shall give His angels charge over you to keep you in all their ways. In your hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. So there's a promise of spiritual protection, correct? There's spiritual bodyguards. Ellen White in Heavenly Places, April 2, there's a little writing from her. She says, angels of God are watching over us. Upon this earth there are thousands and tens of thousands of heavenly messengers commissioned by the Father to prevent Satan from obtaining any advantage over those who refuse to walk in the path of evil. And these angels who guard God's children on earth are in communication with the Father in heaven. Take heed that ye despise not one of these little ones, Christ said, for I say to you that in heaven their angels do always behold the face of my Father which is in heaven. Matthew 18:10. So there is a protection for every one of us. And we can be guaranteed of that. Also, Psalms 91:12. Where have we seen that? It's the devil's favorite Bible verse. Right out of Psalm 91. The devil memorizes Scripture. He probably has the whole Bible memorized. If you go to Matthew, if you go to Luke, what happens? There's Christ in the desert being tempted. And what does the devil tell him to do? He tells him, jump. Go jump off the temple. Jump, because doesn't it say in Psalm 91 that you will not dash your foot against a stone? And how does Christ respond to him? He responds with quoting. You know, it's really important when you read these verses to see their links. He quotes Deuteronomy 6:16, and we know this verse because we just studied it last Sabbath or 2 Sabbaths ago. You shall not put the Lord your God to test as you did in Massah. What happened in Massah and Meribah? Do we remember? What happened? That's where they had no water. The waters were bitter. And it was named that because they tested and quarreled with the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? So what does it say? We should not test God. We should not do foolish things like jump off of cliffs or carry the Bible into the lion's den, because that's what Psalms 91 says. There are extremists out there who do this. They're presumptuous. They're presumptuous sins. They go around and they say, where's the COVID-19 patient? I want to go, give him a kiss because God will protect me. This is not how we are to use our faith. It is not true faith. It's not our faith to leverage the power of God for our foolishness. So that is how Christ responded to the devil. You notice the devil will quote Scripture, but he'll never quote it in context. And he'll never quote the whole verse. You shall tread upon the lion and the cobra. The young lion and the serpent you shall trample underfoot. This is an example of the literary parallelism that they had. You see, you have 13, you tread upon the lion and the cobra. And then the next line, in their poetic form, they say the same thing in a different way. It's a way to deepen what they are saying. Now, what is the lion in the Bible? Let's skip the Lion of Judah and all that messianic stuff. But what does the devil do? He's a roaring lion looking for whom he will devour. But what is the devil also? He's a serpent. So this points to open, violent aggression of a lion, but also secret, cunning, subtle, the deadliness of a serpent, a poisonous serpent. And if you look at the Hebrew words behind it, you have lion and cobra. Then you have a young lion in the next line, because they're saying this is not just an old lion, this is a healthy, strong, prime lion that you will tread upon. And then they say serpent, which the word for that is actually dragon. So they blend things together. The devil is also a dragon. You see the dragon in Revelation. Now the psalm switches from the psalmist, the faithful, saying how they will trust into the Lord, to God himself, to Yahweh himself, speaking in the first person. So God himself is speaking now. That's why you have A, B, and then C is reading God's part, the person representing C. Because he has set his love upon me, he being the faithful person, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high because he has known my name. Sometimes I like to read other versions. English Standard says, he holds fast to me in love. So because he has set his love upon me, it's he holds fast to me in love. It's something that is, you're not just, oh yes, I love God. You are hanging on. You're not just dwelling, but you're hanging on with all your might. That is the kind of faith we need to have. He holds me fast in love, not letting go. It's complete reliance on God. You look at our healthcare system, and I've heard, talk radio people, they say, oh, in Wuhan, people died, but that's China. They can hardly feed their own people. In America, we have the best healthcare system in the world. We spend millions of dollars. You know what? It's all finite. It's all finite. They did a study 5 or 10 years ago. How many extra ventilators do they have in the United States for a national catastrophe? They said around 60,000. And then now I'm reading today that there is a secret stash, maybe up to 10,000 extra ventilators. The number one thing that happens with COVID virus is people, their respiratory function, it declines. In 3 or 4 hours, they go from a relatively healthy person to suddenly needing a vent. And then what you have is people in Italy, doctors in Italy, they're saying, well, this lady, she's 30, she has 3 children. This lady is 50, she's healthy. And this person's 60 and has high blood pressure. And we only have 1 vent. So that's it. We've reached capacity. And then you have to choose who's going to live and who's going to die. But with God, it's beyond that. It's beyond that. His love is limitless. And even though there may be sickness and famine, his love is beyond all things. That's why we cannot trust. Some trust in horses, some trust in chariots, but we have to trust in the name of the Lord our God. Because all the things we are used to, we are spoiled with, all those things are a facade. They're here temporarily. But when the system can't handle it anymore, what are you going to do? Scream and yell at Trump? He can't do it. He's not God. Society can't do it. It already operates at 80 to 90% of its healthcare capacity. There has to be a reliance on something deeper. That's how people have done this through all generations, by reading these psalms, by a psalm like this. And for us to focus on the physical things of this life, we'll end up being disappointed, no matter how good they look. God will set this man on high because he has known his name. Remember? It said the name of God in 4 different ways in the beginning. It's more than just, oh yeah, I know God. You need to know God. You need to abide with God. Verse 15. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. Answering implies not just, hey John, hi, yes. It's not just yes, responding, but it implies a positive response to the faithful person's call. It implies that when I've called for help, God will help me, and he will respond to me saying, yes, I will be there for you. It's a positive response. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. So the faithful in God are honored. They are not put to shame. And they are satisfied. Satisfaction. There's nothing in this world that can satisfy us. People are looking all over. It can be wealth, it can be possessions, it can be cars. In the end, you're just never going to be fully satisfied unless you have the satisfaction of Christ. He is the only one that can fully satisfy us. In any time, we can be satisfied in the concentration camp. We can be satisfied in our $1 million house. It doesn't matter where we are. We're satisfied with the love of God. And of course, God will show us, the faithful, his salvation. In Psalm 17:15, as for me, I shall behold your face in righteousness. When I awake, I shall be satisfied with your likeness. It's a complete thing. It is a full satisfaction. Psalms 91 is not given to us as a promise to believers that we will have a carefree existence, that we will live free of stress, free of illness, free of disease. It's not that promise. Horrible things happen to the people of God, but this is an appeal to persuade us as believers to put complete trust in God. And I would like to close with Isaiah 26, 3-4. It says, you will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you. Trust in the Lord forever, for in Yah, the Lord, is everlasting strength. And let us internalize those words, that the only way for us to have safety and peace in this world is to keep stayed, to keep our mind held onto Christ. And that is the only way we can find anything. That is the only way you can have any kind of safety in this world. It's not to rely on the things around us, on the supermarket, on the water, on the electricity, only to have our trust and faith in God. Psalm 91 gave me a new insight as to what true faith, what true abiding in God is. And I hope that we can all learn that and have a little taste of that today as well.